Today we're going to do a little demonstration of this Dodge Grand Caravan conversion van. It's a replacement for us for the Toyota Sienna side entry vehicle that we had. This is a rear entry vehicle, and the reason for the change is because the side entry vehicle with the new wheelchair we have for Linda was just very, very difficult to use. It was easy to get her up into the vehicle easily enough, but then when it came time to move her into the correct position, it was a lot of jockeying back and forth. It'd be like an 8-point turn, and it was just too much work. It was too hard. It was too heavy. So we traded that in on this Dodge Caravan, and it is working quite well. So let me show you how the thing actually works. To get the rear end up, to get the gate up, you just push the button twice on the remote, and up it goes, just like magic. And then the next thing you do, as I walk into the picture here, is open out the ramp. This is a fold-out ramp. You pull it up like that. There's a latch here that you pull firmly to the right, and you just pull it out like that, and that's all there is to it. And the next job is to get the patient into the van. Let's see how that goes. The next thing we're going to do is, using the key fob, we're going to open the side doors on the van. And here we have this cover is actually covering a seat, a single seat that can be folded down and opened up if you have a non-wheelchair passenger that you're carrying, and then there's plenty of room in back for the wheelchair passenger, along with tie downs, so if there's room for them back there. The next part of the project is to attach the straps that hold the wheelchair in place, and there are several positions for that. We're going to start with the ones back here. And the way this works, here's the machine, and you just slide it in place like that. And move it up to the appropriate place on the chair. Same exact thing on the other side. And slide it up to right there, okay? The next question is, why do you want these side doors open? Well, the answer is because there are more straps to attach here. They just come right up here and attach right there on this side. Now we're around to the other side, and we do the same thing right here. And that's all there is to it. The final thing will be to get her seat belt attached. The seat belt is back there. We simply strap that around her, and we are good to go. Once we have her belted in, then we simply bring up the ramp. It's a fold-up ramp. Fold it like that. Lock it in place so it doesn't rattle. And close down the hatch. Close the side doors, belt yourself in, turn the engine on, and away you go. This is a 2017 model Dodge Caravan. It's the 5th generation in the series. They stopped making them in 2020, I believe, and they went to the Chrysler Pacifica. But this one has been pretty well sorted out. It is actually in really good condition. I'm surprised that I don't see any dents or dings or scrape marks or paint chips or anything on it. It's really in good shape. It has a lot of miles on it for the kind of car that I usually kind of driving I usually do. It's got about 70,000 miles on it, but the inside is really, really clean. There's just nothing that looks worn about the upholstery, the seats, or the headliner, or any of that stuff. It is in great shape. It's a very, very basic van. This does not have all the electronic gadgets and gizmos that the Toyota Sienna had. It does not have blind spot monitoring. It doesn't have rear cross-track monitoring. It doesn't have automatic cruise control, that is to say, adaptive cruise control. It does have the usual safety features that you'd expect on any modern vehicle, with the seat belts and all that, and the airbags. But it's not a fancy machine at all. It even has manual temperature control. I haven't had a car that hasn't had automatic temperature control in decades, but this one you got to set your own temperature for hot and cold, and the fan speed and all that. God, how we do suffer. It has plenty of storage space. You've got room for your your marijuana or your cocaine or your heroin or whatever you want to put in there. It has 2 glove boxes, probably room in here for any sort of stuff you would want. Who knows, maybe even in this one here. See, there's a lot of room in that glove box. Remember when glove boxes were so tiny you couldn't hardly fit anything in there? And they really were glove boxes, and that was about it. This one here, gosh, you could probably fit a 9mm pistol in there if you wanted to. All right, take a look at the engine. This has the 3.6 liter V6 engine. They call it the Pentastar. It came out in 2011, and the initial versions of it had some problems. They had some issues with the with one of the cylinder heads, because one of the pistons, or one of the valve covers, one of the valves was getting too hot, so they had problems with that. They pretty much ironed that out. They've got some cooling system problems, or had, but they don't anymore. They seem to have some rocker arm problems in some of them, but not that at 70,000 miles, if it was going to develop, it probably would have. Now, these Chrysler vehicles were at one time owned by Mercedes-Benz, and there are some little clues, some little vestigial remains of the Mercedes relationship there. One is, for example, the shape of the key fob. This looks an awful lot like a Mercedes key fob, with this end of it goes into the ignition, and you turn it. That's the other thing this doesn't have, is a push button start. I'm used to having the key in my pocket, get in, push the button, away you go. Well, hell, you got to get the key out to get this sucker to start. You sit there with your seatbelt on, you have to dig in your pocket and find the damn key. What a pain in the butt that is. But eventually I will learn. I mean, I'm not stupid. The other vestigial thing that I noticed about this, between this and the Mercedes, is, look at here. Look at the oil filter. Instead of having a spin-on oil filter like most American cars have, this has a canister oil filter, just like Mercedes does. They used to, they still do have that. It's a lot cleaner. It's easier for the mechanic to change. One difference is this housing that the filter sits in is made of plastic. Yes, plastic, instead of aluminum, as the Mercedes is. So one of the consequences can be, with a certain number of miles and a certain number of certain driving conditions, that plastic can get so hot that it will eventually begin to leak. It won't fit properly, and it will leak, and the oil cooler is in there too, and sometimes that'll get a little bit messed up. So sometime you might have to look at replacing that oil filter housing. Otherwise, the engine itself seems to be pretty darn good. I had all the fluids changed on within about a week of buying it, so it should be good to go for quite some period of time. Not a bad looking vehicle, and I'll tell you the honest to God truth, it drives and rides better than the Toyota Sienna. Now, I think the Toyota Sienna is probably the better vehicle starting out, but by the time they got through doing all the handicap conversion stuff in it, they got to the point where it was probably so top heavy that it just it rode like a truck, and you get up to 70 miles an hour and it was wandering all over the place. You begin to think, my God, have I already had 2 or 3 martinis? No, it's just that the wind is blowing the damn thing. So this one is more stable on the highway, and it is definitely quieter. I think they took out all the soundproofing in the Sienna, and they didn't put it back in. But in this one, it's a front-wheel drive van. Let's face the facts. It's not a blast to drive by any stretch of the imagination, but it does handle and ride a little better, I think, and I'm pretty sure most people would agree, than the Toyota Sienna conversion van. That 3.6 liter V6 engine is supposed to be pretty reliable, pretty long-lived. It isn't the cheapest thing to operate. It only gets, I guess, rated 17 and 25 miles per gallon by EPA. I've been getting around 20 with the little amount of driving that we've been doing, and we probably won't use it very much. If we put 3,000 or 4,000 miles a year on it, that'll be about it. It has sufficient power. It gets up and goes. It'll keep up with traffic with no trouble. It's not a speedster by any means, but it does okay. The engine has, I want to say, 3.6 liters. I think that amounts to about 220 cubic inches, and I think it has about 280 horsepower and 270 or 260 pound-feet of torque. And that's without any turbocharging. That's a naturally aspirated engine, so they're getting a fair amount of horsepower out of a relatively small amount of displacement. Well, look at this. Here's another artifact, another thing that's really kind of old-fashioned about this vehicle. Look at this, folks. Look at this. A radio antenna. A whip radio antenna. When is the last time you saw one of those? Usually the antennas are built into the windshield, but this one, they have it right mounted on the fender of the car, just like they used to back in the 1950s. How sweet it is. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is these tires. Look at the brand name on this thing. Have you ever heard of this before? I sure haven't. Iron Man. Iron Man tires. Where the hell are they made? Iran? Maybe North Korea or Venezuela or someplace like that? I've looked them up. They're made in China, just like everything else that we buy in this country. Made in China. And what can you say about them? Well, they're cheap. That's why they're on here. They're cheap. Now, they get a fairly decent rating in terms of their traction on dry and wet pavement, but it's one of the few tires I've come across that doesn't have any tread wear warranty at all. In other words, you put the damn thing on and it falls apart on you right away. Well, too bad. You bought it. It's all yours. You're stuck with it. However, turns out that these tires are made by the Hercules Tire Company. That at least is a name I'm familiar with. And the research I've done suggests that they've been around since the 1950s. Now, these are not performance tires. They would never suggest putting these on a vehicle that you're going to drive with any degree of aggression. But this is for heaven's sakes, let's face the facts. This is a front-wheel drive minivan. And when you go around a curve and you see a sign marked 35 miles an hour, with this thing you believe the 35 miles an hour. With your Mercedes or BMW, you can kind of ignore it. But these tires are just fine for the sort of vehicle this is and for the kind of driving that most van drivers are going to do. The only problem you got with them is, let's face it, kind of an ego issue. Supposing you're sitting around the bar talking about merits of various types of tires with your buddies, and they're talking about their Michelins and their Pirellis and all this and that, and then they say, well, what kind of a tire do you have? You say, Iron Man. You practically spit out your beer when you say that word, Iron Man. Iron Range, I don't know. Oh, low tread life, that's the other thing on them. Not Iron Man, low tread life. Yeah, not more than about probably 30,000 on them, if you're lucky, and if you drive them sanely and you keep them inflated properly and so on. But, for a van, they're going to be fine. These tires, I checked the date on them, they were manufactured in 2021, so they're within a year old. They're going to be just fine. Well, that's a quick tour of this Dodge Caravan conversion van. We like it, does the job for us, and I think that anybody who's in the market for a rear entry wheelchair conversion van would probably be pretty satisfied with this. And that's about it. Thanks for watching.